How did you get into this anyways? Like, when did this start?
Ooh, long story. I was actually coming from Afghanistan. I came from Afghanistan. I was a contractor. I came back in pursuit of music, entertainment, acting, all that. So when they had films and stuff down here, I was an extra. I was always doing something.
Okay.
Hitting the clubs up at the time, trying to push my music, and painting also. So I was at the Rebel Festival. I was an artist out there. And in all of it, it seemed like I was just very unsuccessful. And I ended up meeting this young lady one night at an event. I'll leave it at that. At an event, and at this event, she was getting harassed by this other guy, and I felt this pull to tell this guy to leave her alone. So
Right.
what I did is I said, "Hey man, that's my sister. You can dance with her, but don't dance with her like that." He kept trying to grab her, and he ended up backing off. And later I came back and approached her and just talked a little bit and ended up getting her number, and now that woman's my wife. But she wasn't the stereotypical woman I would normally date, and I see what like God had did in my life and brought her into my life. But the reason that this is important is because it shapes the story. I ended up feeling inadequate because she was a nurse, she had a great job, and here I am just playing around trying to pursue some dreams that just weren't happening. And I hit this low place where I was like, I gotta do something. I have to do something. I need a career. So I'm going through the phone book, and I saw generator repair in the yellow pages when they used to have the yellow pages. And, generator repair on one page, and the other page was massage therapy. And then I called the generator repair, and they didn't answer the phone. Called the massage therapy. They answered the phone, but wouldn't answer any questions. They're like, you gotta come in. You gotta come in. I'm like, what am I coming in for? So I decided to come in, and it was a lock. It was a lock. So that's what got me there. But I feel like I had like these, I would almost call them like a God wink at times, where people would tell me, hey man, you're too strong. Your hands are too soft to be a mechanic. Stuff like that. I was, before I went to Afghanistan, I was working as a Humvee mechanic, and I ended up getting this crazy scar from it right here.
Yeah.
And just working underneath a Humvee, and I would have people, say stuff like that to me all the time. And I was probably the worst mechanic the world's ever seen. I'd break stuff, people blame it on me, and they had this big layoff. I remember this. It was crazy. It was at least 1,000 people that got laid off, and I made the cut. Like, the worst person made the cut. And I remember I guess he was like a crew chief. He came through, and me and him had, some issues back in the day. And he was like, "You're still here?" I was like, "Man, I can't believe it either, man." So, so yeah.
So you went to you were deployed?
I was actually a contractor.
Okay, contractor.
Yeah,
Got you. What'd you do? What'd you do over there?
I started off as a food service worker.
Got you.
I ended up getting promoted to become a cook, and then switched jobs to become a generator mechanic.
Got you. Okay,
Yeah.
That's interesting. So you just decided just to take a civilian job and just go overseas.
It was interesting because the Humvee side, I was in the States working on Humvees.
Okay.
And I thought this guy was my friend at the time. He ended up finding out about a job fair. So he finds out about this job fair. I go and I'm like, okay, well let's see it. At the time I was married, and I'm not gonna get deep in this story, but my ex-wife wanted me to leave the whole time. So I think she probably had a policy on me or something. I don't know. I don't know if she had a policy on me, but something was going on, man. She wanted me to leave the whole time. So I ended up in Afghanistan, and it was different, man. It was a different experience, and I grew up, I matured, and I got to really see myself.
Yeah.
It was a very trying and strange time in my life.
Got you.
Yeah.
Well, so you came back. So when did you start? What year did you start, like, doing therapy?
I started in, pretty sure it was like 07. I think
Okay.
I started school in 07. Yeah. So, So when I started school, things were different then. We had a school out here called Blue Cliff and a couple other massage schools. I think we had probably a total of 3. And it was definitely, a good time for therapy. People would come through off the street and stuff and want a like $25 massage for an hour. I'm like, where else in the world can you do that but a massage school? So So that was definitely interesting. Definitely interesting.
Well, so you started out doing that. Did you see yourself getting into more of the sports performance? Because I know that's your wheelhouse now. You're not just doing like a, regular, therapeutic massage or like just a regular, off the street kind of thing. You're more focused on the sports therapy. How did that happen?
Okay, so interesting. I'm in school. We're in our clinicals, and this lady comes through, and she says she is an Olympic athlete. Mm-hmm. So, and in my brain it was like, oh yeah, I would love to work with Olympians. So I can say this was the worst situation ever. So when we're done with the session, she comes to me and she says, "This is the worst massage I've ever had."
Oof.
I mean, like, and I thought I was the guy in school. I thought I was the guy. And it just my ego was down. I mean, my confidence was down. And I remember, it was the first time I remember thinking, I need to come up with techniques specifically for people instead of what they've given us in school. It's not that it wasn't good, but it wasn't specific,
mm-hmm.
So I figured I would never see her again because she said she'd never work with me again. And I came up with a technique for her specifically. And the other therapist that she was going to at my school ended up, I guess he got sick that day, so she was stuck with me, and she let me know she didn't want me as a therapist. And when we were finished, I remember walking out, and she said, "You're like an Olympic quality therapist." I went from garbage to to amazing. So that was I feel like the seed that was planted in me that I could be at that caliber.
Yeah.
And what did it take? It was definitely learning that person and learning their imbalances. And I think that's something that we weren't really taught very well, to really dive into someone's imbalance. But even there, my bills were getting paid when I was working at a spa. I didn't really get the opportunity to work with that many pro athletes or at the time. So, someone would come through and maybe they're athletic and I get to, work with them. But it was far few in between, so it took time. It took time to develop that. Yeah. And
so what type of like strategic plan did you create for her versus what you were doing prior? Like what did you kind of, figure out to say, okay, well, I need to fill the gaps here?
Yeah. So with her, I noticed I was just working her mid back and like doing our traditional deep tissue that we were taught in school. So I started traps, rhomboids, like in the middle of the shoulder blades, and I would slowly come down, and it just felt choppy,
mm-hmm.
So the next session I actually shifted my hands. I put my hands together, and I was just coming around her QL, and she had a extremely small waist, so I was just rocking back and forth with her QL, and getting that tissue to move a little bit more. And that was it. That was really the tweak that I could find for her. And after that, it was just like, I feel like I wasn't searching as hard for the big wows versus let's just be precise.
Got you.
And I actually just worked with the WNBA player, and she said to me, she said, "You didn't try to do too much.
Mm-hmm.
You just were really specific on the areas at hand that I needed work, versus in the past, I would have tried to do just everything. I try to overload a client and wow them so they're so amazed, but that's going to take away time from them, like to recover, time for them to work out. So they may want to work out tomorrow, and I traditionally I'd say, hey, take a day off.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't. So that was another issue with me. So. And
you got into doing that, and so at what point did you get out of from there? You're in the spa world working on
mm-hmm.
Just whoever walks in.
Mm-hmm.
At what point did you kind of take the leap of faith to go out and say, okay, I'm just going to pursue this just for mostly athletes or other or just basically pinpointing issues for people and working on those?
I would say I kind of treaded water with that. I stepped out a little bit, so I was working at Bel Air Fitness for about a year. I would go back and forth. I go to the spa and I go to Bel Air, and I wasn't confident enough to say I'm just going to leave the spa alone. So I kind of went back and forth for a while, and they started cutting our hours at the spa. We went from 7 days a week to maybe 3. And I was like, this is impossible. I can't live off of that. So from there, I was knowing that I needed to shift. I needed to pick up some more time. I needed to market, and it was a challenge marketing because, I really never pursued that. I didn't know how to market my brand. I didn't really understand the brand within itself and what does it look like. And I've been in other people's brands, but I didn't know it took thousands and years to slowly build the rapport and the trust with people to develop your own brand.
Yeah. And so from there, you just kind of slowly grew into what you have now.
Yeah, I would say so. I think the biggest growth was I ended up working in a box gym. So I learned that it's almost like fishing. If you're in one pond and it's not biting, you need to move around.
Right.
So I was in a pond and they were kind. Everyone was kind there, but I wasn't getting the clientele that I needed. So I started just going to different places and just seeing, hey, is this going to be feasible? Is this going to work? And people are going to, pay attention to what I'm doing. And the more I moved around, the more I feel like it was created, a little buzz was created. But I truly saw the shift where I ended up branding myself Shreveport Bossier Sports Massage. Mm-hmm. When I did that, that's where I started getting a good amount of people coming through, because in the internet you have to put in Shreveport or Bossier.
Right.
So I remember I had a client and he was military, and he was like saying to me that I was super smart, and I was like, why'd you say that? And he said, well, because you branded yourself Shreveport Bossier. Yeah. And I'm gonna have to type that in, and you're gonna be the first one that comes up. And that was a big shift. And the next big shift was working at a box gym, my first box gym, and working with CrossFitters. And that's where I feel like there was a bigger shift in my therapy, because I couldn't deny the repetition that CrossFit produced with the muscles and the imbalances. It was definitely every day I could see a consistent thread of injuries that were really consistent for CrossFit. And it was, getting the lats back, shoulders back, getting deeper in your squat was important, range of motion, just in your wrist, all that movement was really important to them. And to me, it was the simplest thing to do. And I feel like the therapy for CrossFit was not challenging. It just was like, okay, you just handed me money, to be honest with you. That's how I felt. And but then I saw the need to teach more on the imbalances, how to get stability and control versus just give someone therapy and let them go. I feel as if that was another shift in my therapy, because I would see clients go to physical therapy and come back and get a lot of results from me, and then we're kind of trading off. Someone, they would trust me for so much, and then they have to go back to the physical therapist, and I'd get frustrated because I just lost a client that I feel like I could have helped if I just knew a couple tweaks. So I started studying up a little bit more on stability, stabilizing muscles, and then even activating muscles. And then the biggest shift happened for me with bodybuilders. So when I started working with bodybuilders, their pursuit was not necessarily altogether my muscle connection, but separating the muscle fiber, the muscles, and getting those results. And that's where I started. I didn't actually put it down like this is what this brand represents, but performance became definitely a big part of my brand. And whatever someone needed, if they needed to get faster, they needed to get more muscle separation, so on stage they look better, their muscles pop, I could pretty much do it all. So now I get people coming from pain management to high performance therapy. So I get it's just so many different types of clientele. Even the youth are coming through, because now parents are seeing, I believe, that they need to invest in their kids now versus we're just pushing them to make it to the NFL, the NBA, and they're already injured. They were injured at 10. Yeah. If you would have looked at them, if you could have just looked at their imbalance, they're limping. They've been limping for 10 years, so it's nothing new. So now I'm seeing parents definitely investing in their kids and wanting to learn, why are kids having these injuries? Well,
it's funny you say that, because we talked about it. So you worked on me yesterday, And as soon as I walked in, you were like, hey, something's up with your feet, right? One, I'm flat-footed, and then two, they point outwards, slightly. So, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I haven't even thought about that or looked at that or had anyone even ever say that to me, because I'm always just focusing on the task at hand and really like, hey, I'm having an issue here, but I'm just like, I'm flat-footed. I just thought that's how I am. You know what I mean? Like, and there's really, this is just what I'm gonna have to deal with because of this. But I didn't know that slight adjustments could, help me in the long run.
Absolutely.
But it's interesting to me that you can look at someone, and even if they, like, from the regular trained eye, no one sees anything wrong, but you see an imperfection that may be due to, something you can resolve.
Yeah. I would say that kind of stemmed from me in the beauty of having all these jobs that I've had. I was a waiter for years, and even being an artist. Most artists, in my opinion, are the worst salespeople ever.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So,
for sure.
And because of that, they don't even know how to brand themselves as well. Getting back to branding, but for me, I've taken all those jobs and noticed that when I was a waiter, I would always have sharp pain on my left side, my left oblique, or QL, like in my QL area as well. So, but I would hold the tray with my right hand. So I was like, what is? And I always thought I had kidney problems, but it was the tension and the overcompensation of my body, and things like that. And working as a mechanic, always having wrist issues as a mechanic, and we would work on hubs for Humvees for like 4 hours straight. Just turning the wrench, just 4 hours straight. So I would always have like wrist stuff from there, and just that build of one injury after the next injury, and trying to figure out like, what do I do, with that. And before therapy, I just rested. I just thought, hey, I rest, I ice, put some heat on it. I thought that's what you do, and that's kind of the rule of thumb. But I figured out with high performance athletes that it was more. You could really look at someone and break down movement almost like a vehicle. If the tires are straight, I think we talked about that. If the tires are straight, there's no tension on that vehicle. So there's no reason for an alignment if the tires are straight.
Right.
But once that wheel starts veering out to the right or veering inside, there's tension. And that's the same thing with our movement pattern. If we can reduce the tension, we're more efficient. You're a more efficient runner. If you don't have tension, you're a more efficient mover across the board if your posture is better. So it's just looking at those things that can create discomfort and tension. But when we're talking about force hitting the ground and coming off the ground, if you're a sprinter, a power lifter, you're squatting a lot of weight, the same force that goes down has to come back up. So if we have issues with our feet, that's the simplest place to start. You're going to turn out even further with your feet. You're going to lose some energy from just shaking. So if I'm hitting the ground, I'm pounding at the ground. Once my foot hits the ground, my ankle is going to shake, and then I'm going to shake all the way up versus having more stability. Now I'm more powerful. Yeah. And that's, go ahead.
No, I mean, that's just insane to think about, because I've never looked at that. I was just like being efficient, making sure posture's correct, from, the knees up, kind of thing, not really paying attention to that. Just always thinking, man, I'm flat-footed, and this is just my damn feet hurt. If I run a long ways, like if I do anything long distance, my feet are gonna hurt. Like if I, it just is what it is, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of interesting. Just the fact that you just said that. I was there, definitely in that place at one point where it was all about being an athlete, and I wasn't diving into the question why is this happening, why am I moving this way. And when I started asking those questions about myself, I started asking those questions about my clients. And I do feel like I derived a lot of my therapy from my own injuries. And I was just telling a client today, I was trying to do some jump training years ago, injured my neck, and for at least 2 months I'd wake up in pain. I remember I'm just being transparent, man. I'd be crying some days because I'm just in pain. I don't know what to do. And I remember God put it on my heart. I didn't hear this audible voice or anything, but I definitely felt that he said that I gave you the tools to fix this. And I never thought about working on myself. And within maybe 2 to 3 days, it was completely gone. So I went 2 months. So I'm sure I was going to hit some more time with the same issue because nothing changed. And from there, I started really diving deeper into being aware of I had an injury. I did this for myself, and I'm going to implement that with my client. But the things that seem really advanced to me, a lot of times they don't really seem advanced. A lot of clients and people in general are just locked into knowing chiropractic care, physical therapy, or maybe going to an occupational therapist or something like that. But normally it's the two of those, and that's it. That's all they know. And if they get a massage, they know maybe deep tissue, but that's probably too deep most of the time. So they're overwhelmed with, what do I do?
Yeah. Well, that's the next thing I was going to ask you is like, what is your stance on that? What was your opinion on, do you think all of those is a great arsenal, or do you have some qualms about this technique or that? Because like a chiropractor versus a physical therapist versus what you do. I've been to all of those things, and for me, like as someone receiving the treatment, I've found benefits in all of them. But like, where are you at on that?
For one, I would say that I had a teacher who was a chiropractor.
Okay.
And definitely taught me a lot. I'm not comfortable personally with any neck adjustments. That's something that I personally am not comfortable with. I do know if it goes wrong, it goes really wrong.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I'm pretty much comfortable with all the other adjustments from chiropractic care. I do feel like in therapy, people need to be decompressed before they dive into strength, work. So if you go get adjusted and then you go back to the gym and you're starting to work out hard again, you are not decompressed. Your spine, your skeletal system is aligned, but your muscles are still tight. So you're going to go back to being tight because your muscles were never released. So from that perspective, I would say at least get your muscles released first, then go to a chiropractor. But sometimes you just needed your muscles released, period. And then you may have just needed to stretch a little bit, and then here you are in a better position. And the biggest issue I have with chiropractic care is the amount of force they use to adjust you, where, in my opinion, some chiropractors use too much force, so they'll use their body weight versus really slowly stretch that person. Because no matter what, when you're manipulated that way, there's a lot of dopamine that's released. Even with what I do, there's dopamine released. And if I have you on dopamine 2-3 times a week, that's the strongest drug. That's a narcotic. That's really what that is. So instead of me giving you a pill, I've created the pill in your own body, where people don't really realize that. So that's kind of an issue I have with chiropractic care. So not as quick, I would say is that adjustment, and I don't like, therapists using too much of their body weight, but I've had some care that was amazing from chiropractors, and some of them that are just amazing in this region, So I know Bates is amazing. He's definitely been a supporter, and I've had a good amount, of chiropractors that are amazing in this region. But as far as physical therapy, I feel they'll give you a movement pattern without, once again, decompression. And they decompress you. It's smoother for that muscle to move, the tissue to move, versus we're just getting you to get stronger and tighter. That doesn't solve everything. Just getting more weights doesn't solve the issue. More strength doesn't solve it. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I've noticed that in physical therapy. Like with chiropractic, I get adjusted once a week, but for a long time I was getting adjusted by the wrong person. And so it was an instant relief for a second, and then would go right back to hurting. And then I found the right person, and to where I go once a week. And it's just, we've already done the corrective. But that's what's interesting when you do the corrective, is that you're not like, say you walk in and maybe you have a slight tension in your back and you get adjusted for the first time, and you're strong and you work out all the time. When you go to work out the next time, your strength's not there anymore because your spine's realigned. So the muscles, just like you said, have had to adjust, and they're not adjusted to that position because they've been in this other position for the wrong position for so long. So they're strong in that wrong position.
Absolutely.
So then you correct the position of the spine, and then they have to get stronger.
That's
right. I've learned all that because I went to the right chiropractor.
That's good.
That I feel, in my opinion. And then, so from there, we're just kind of just doing, once a week just to kind of keep it, keep that,
Yeah.
going. And then with physical therapy, I've went, after injuries or after, operations. And what I've noticed is it's just like herding cattle, man, unfortunately, like most of the time, because you have a lot of people who are older who have had issues or, had, falls or been hurt or whatever it may be, injuries. And they'll go in and they basically just say, okay, here's the heating pad.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to do this movement. Here's the ice. Okay,
Yeah.
bye.
Yeah.
That's my experience with, physical therapy, so I don't have that great of a, a great experience with it. But at the same time, I probably didn't go to the right one, just like I didn't go to the right chiropractor. I'm sure it varies across the board. But what I do think is interesting is that in my experience, I feel like all of those things put together could create a total package.
Absolutely.
Because I noticed what you do, like how I met you last year. We've only, this is the first time we actually sit down and talk at all. But like I met you last year, we were doing Wad Gods. And I was just like, man, I'm in a bind right now. We still have a full another day of this. I just like, he's here and he's supposed to be legit. I'm about to go get this done right now. And you straight up told me whenever you started, he's like, look, man, this is what you said. You were like, look, you're going to feel strong, but don't go out there and hurt yourself because you're about to feel way better. And I'm sure you get that a lot. But you told me that you're like, you're about to feel really strong and a lot better than you did a minute ago. But don't go letting that, screw yourself up, And I had to keep that mentality too, working through. I was like, okay, the relief's there now. I can get through this. At the same time, I'm going to try not to overkill.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting. And I think it's awesome because that's something I think is needed in the sports medicine world, is that what you're doing is not talked about enough.
Yeah.
Like, and body awareness is not talked about enough. Yeah, I'm body aware.
Yeah.
I think I am, but I just learned something new about myself yesterday that's literally in front of my face every day that I don't even pay attention to.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm in this weird place where I'll meet someone or do an event or do an expo, and people may think I'm just like everyone else. Well, I've had massage, so he's nothing different. There's nothing new, and it is different because there are techniques that I've created that are just off the charts. And I've seen the results, but I've also seen some amazing therapists that are doing great stuff throughout the nation as well. But I know what I have is different, and that was the reason for me initially going to Wad Gods and doing some of these competitions, was because I am competitive. I want to see, does my therapy match up against a chiropractor, against a physical therapist, against a Rosti, against those people that are leading, the wave, So, and I feel we are definitely on par with that, and showing people that there's something different. And I've linked in with some movement people that are focused on movement coaching out of New Orleans. It's called GOTA, and they definitely work with a lot of high level athletes. And we are definitely partnered up. I'm a coach with them as well, because it doesn't make sense to be able to release a muscle, activate a muscle, and not show someone how to use the muscle. And I feel that's anything, now you have a weapon that you don't know how to control. Mm-hmm. And my heart is for people to be holistic minded, that it can't just be about I'm moving better and that's it. It needs to be, why am I moving better, and how did I get to this place?
Do you think, like, what would you tell people, like, if they're feeling any type of pain or discomfort, like, what would be the first move there? Like, would it be stretching? Would it be, like trying to figure out what it is that's causing the issue? Or would it be just immediately go somewhere and try to get it checked out? Like,
yeah, I think I'm going to answer this in a couple parts.
Yeah.
I think it's good to start the movement of trying to figure it out. And I do feel, I used to say this years ago, I still say it here and there, but I believe if someone starts digging right now, eventually you're going to find something that you want, like gold or something, but it may take a while. So stay consistent is what I would say. But if it's an individual that has some body awareness, I generally have found where the issue you feel, it is not there. It's the antagonist. It's generally the muscle on the complete opposite side or across. So if someone comes to me and they're like, "Hey Don, my back hurts," and this just happened at an expo I was at, and this guy's like, "Man, I'm benching. Whatever I do, my back hurts." And so I actually took him to some dumbbells and he did a little press, and he's like, "Yeah, it's still there, you know." And this is before I touched him, and then I just worked him right there, and he's like, "Okay, it's down a little bit." And then I took him to the table and completely released it, and he's like, "Whoa, I feel like I can lift a mountain," you know. So I never even touched his back.
Mm-hmm.
I never
What'd
even
you
went
touch?
there. His pecs.
Okay, so it was his pecs.
It was his pecs.
Why was it doing that there?
Well, it's because it's an overload. So because you use it so much, and we're so aggressive about working one body part because we want to show it, we end up overloading it, and that needs to be released, and we don't even naturally feel it sometimes. So it's generally the muscle that takes the greatest load that you don't naturally feel, and that's what I'm looking for. So even if I'm working definitely with a lot of female bikini competitors. It's more females than males, definitely. And with them, I'm doing a lot like more psoas work, and you know, like around their hip flexor and stuff like that. So, but I'll do that to release their glute. You know, they wouldn't think that. They want me to work like around their glute, and I'm like, well, that's not
because they're working their glutes. They're
working their glutes so much, but they don't realize they're also really hurting those hip flexors. You know, so and that's the antagonist. You know, on the opposite side, that's causing that imbalance. So if I get a sprinter, for instance, and they're like, "Well, my hamstrings hurt. They was cramping up." I normally release their quad. And they're like, "You didn't even touch my hamstrings." I'm like, "But the overload came from the quad." You know, so it's the antagonist. So that's what I would tell someone that right now needs some relief. Think about the antagonist. Think about the muscle on the other side. Work that. If you don't have any body awareness, you probably need to go to someone that is driven in a sports realm, you know, because generally you can go to a sports therapist and they're geared differently than just a regular massage therapist, because a massage therapist is focusing on you relaxing and being calmer, and even they may be okay with giving you some deep tissue and you get some benefits, but a sports therapist is generally going to be moving you through a full range of motion. They're going to be testing your movement. It's more clinical, I would say, but it should be very efficient. So they shouldn't be all over the place like, well, let me work everything. Let me just get you calmer. You know, it should really be efficient work. And the stuff I do could be, where it would take 90 minutes for a regular, therapist, it may take me 15 minutes to do some of the work I do. And you would get the full benefits of 90 minutes. And I definitely run into that with clients where in their brain they want 90 minutes. I don't know anyone, and none of my clients really want that much time with me anymore. They're like, nah, 20, 30 is good, especially after a good assessment and everything. But if I'm working and I'm in a rhythm, you don't need more than 30 minutes.
No, I completely agree. I think like yesterday you worked on my feet, and I released did something in my calves, I believe, and then my quads, and then some hip flexor stuff, and then my lats, I believe, and that. All that, if we wouldn't have been talking so much in between, wouldn't have even taken probably 30 minutes, I would say.
Yeah.
But I would say this, like, I went and worked out yesterday evening, but I knew I wasn't going to do any, like, heavy load stuff because it's kind of like our Spartan day is Monday. Like, we do all the crazy stuff on Monday, but it's light load bearing. That's what I was telling you beforehand, but, like, I felt almost high, like, where I felt numb. Yeah. But in a good way, not so much after you get a deep tissue where you go lay down and you come out and it's literally like you're lethargic and you can't do anything. I didn't feel that way. I just felt an ease of use, I guess. Yeah. It would be a good way to explain it for me, Yeah. And then later on yesterday evening, I was sore and I'm like, because these things have been released.
Yeah.
And so my feet are hurting a little more because they're positioned differently, and these muscles were, my inside quads were hurting a little more because you released my outside, and I'm just like, okay, I'm feeling it now this evening. I felt it. I felt a lot yesterday evening. I was like, damn,
it's real.
But it's important. I think that just so many people, and this is not in the sense of like, because I'm doing the CrossFit stuff. We're not just talking about like people who are trying to compete or athletes, but just people on a regular basis just don't realize how much inflammation they're carrying around, how bad their posture is. What it is they're putting in their body and what that results in, and then also how much bad positioning they have on a day-to-day basis, and how long it's going to basically diminish their life.
Absolutely.
Their span of life.
Yeah. I tell clients, think about where you're gonna look, what you're gonna look like, how you're gonna move 20 years from now. Mm-hmm. I've had some clients like, I don't think I'll be alive then. But what if you are? It's not gonna get any better unless you start working in that direction, and that should be our mindset. I was telling someone the other day. I did an event, so I think it might have been Sunday. But what I'm doing is I'm not trying to necessarily add. I'm really just looking at where you're moving bad at, and I'm tweaking that. That's it. So now I notice there's an issue with your foot, and there's an issue with how you're moving your arm. So I'm gonna go to the arm that's not moving well. So if you're dragging your leg, okay, I'm going to the leg that you're dragging, and there's an imbalance there. Now I'm gonna work that. And I've got a soccer player out in Dallas, and his dad, is working on him getting fast. He's already fast. He's 15 years old, super fast right now. But I detected that he wasn't moving his right arm efficiently, and his dad was like, "Well,
but it's soccer, right?
Yeah, but it's soccer.
Yeah, so okay, why is it? Yeah,
okay. So what happened with him was his dad was like, "Well, what do you think happened?" And I said, well, he had to have some type of injury on the right side. He said, oh, well, he broke his collarbone or his clavicle. It was a clavicle injury. He said, but it healed up. I said, not completely, because he's not using it right. So I told him I'm going to have to basically activate everything, separate everything, activate everything. And then we're finished. He's moving it amazing. He's like, man, I feel amazing. And I said, you're not out of the woods yet, because now you have to get the stability, the control, and all that. I feel like the next day he just went all out. And it was sore, but he's not used to that because he truly never recovered from the past. So that imbalance alone, if it's fixed, he's more efficient. And that's what I'm looking at with speed.
Well, when you bring a client on, say like, for instance, like me, so say I'm trying to fix this position issue, shoulder mobility, hip mobility, mm-hmm. feet, like, so we start working on these things, and you tell me there's things I need to do. Basically, I have homework.
Yeah.
Like once those issues start becoming resolved, like, is there a need for like care after that? Like, how does that work? Like maintenance, pretty much? Or?
Yeah. Well, I would tell anyone, you should be. I like this framework. It could sound a little harsh, but I don't mean it to. But every individual should be their best counselor, coach, therapist. We have to get to a place as individuals where we know our body, a little bit better. And at least on my side, yeah, I get maintenance work, but generally I pretty much can do it all myself. But I still need that, I'm missing something. I need some eyes on me. So I think we all can always use that. And that could be just like a vehicle. Every 2 to 3 months you get an oil change.
Yeah.
You definitely need to get something checked out just to tweak it out. Now on a higher level, higher end vehicle, that could be once a month, that could be once a week. Mm-hmm. Depends on the type of vehicle we're looking at. So then it depends on the type of individual we're looking at and the load we're putting on that individual. So that's how I would try to answer that question. But I feel like with me, I try to give you as many tools as you can have for yourself. And if it's a mobility, range of motion, I'll definitely show you some stretches that you can do, some foam rolling you can do to keep everything mobile and pliable. And then, you might not need to see me as much. That's kind of how I look at it. It's just staying on top of that tissue moving efficiently, and activated efficiently.
Well, so that's a whole layout. I mean, pretty much, because you have to look at the people that, who aren't doing that, just like you said. So like you have like a high performance vehicle or race car basically, and then you have your domestic vehicle that's just trying to move around and operate efficiently, and then you have one that you want peak performance in all the time.
Yeah.
So those, I mean, I see your reference there, but have you ever seen people that just, you look at them, you're like, nothing's wrong? Like I feel like there's no possible way, right?
Even the people that I feel like there's not a lot wrong, they're probably coming to me even more, which is weird.
Okay.
It's like, I feel like it's this, so they generally have a good amount of body awareness and they've put it all into their body. So that's a little different. But on the flip side, I think if we start talking about athletes and the higher caliber athlete, their endurance to pain and their pain threshold is so much higher,
Yeah.
where that causes the biggest problem, because they were already hurt 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and they pushed through. So now we have a tear, or now we have something so excessive where I could have fixed it, day one, but we're like 5 years in. So that becomes a problem. So those are the clients that they're really in bad shape. But people that move really, really good tend to be like therapists,
Yeah,
because I mean, like,
they're thinking about it all the time.
Outside of that, I mean, like, okay, even if you have a ballerina, there is such an overload in the way they turn their feet, the way that they may spin or pirouette. If you have a dancer, it's the pounding on their feet. If you have a gymnast, it's the quickness that of their fast twitch muscles. Like, they're firing so fast, so they're always wanting to explode. So with every individual, there's something that is unique to them. So that there are so many different ways they move differently. If you have a boxer, they could be moving good in the ring, but you take them out of the ring and they're moving really bad because now their shoulders are forward because they want to punch you and use as much force. So they roll their shoulders forward. But now all day, that's bad posture.
Yeah.
So I mean, is there a person that I can look at and say, oh man, I feel like they move really, really good? The person I think I've studied the most that's moved the best, he's no longer alive, but Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
I feel like he dove into being efficient in movement, but not everything was perfect, but he definitely was one that was body aware, and I like that about him. So he took an art form and specialized it and utilized every tool he had for it, and then basically deconstructed it again and said, like, be like water. Just don't take movement and say I'm going to be rigid. Take movement and say I'm going to continue to progress and grow. And I see that as a therapist. I'm not looking at what I don't have. I look at what I do have.
Yeah.
So when I look at an individual, I look at, okay, well, this is moving good. That's moving bad. So, and I want to max them out to move as efficient as I can. I had a lady today, she couldn't even turn her head to the right, and she had a fusion, all this, and I'm like, I'm gonna fix this, I'm gonna wow her, but I can't wow her and do too much. We're just gonna break this thing down.
Yeah.
And she probably had at least 45 degrees. She went from 0 to 45 degrees, and she did not see that coming.
Yeah.
So it's just figuring out, what do we want, and when I get a client, I ask them, what do you want? And a lot of times they're like, I just heard, I don't know. If I get a boxer, I'll see a boxer and I'm like, well, do you want more strength in your hand? They may say yes, but they're not thinking that they can get that. I've only had one client that I feel like I don't want to give them any more. And he was a guy, he's jumping, his vertical was like 48-inch vertical. Like a 40 is amazing.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan was a 48.
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't want him to get a 50-inch vertical unless he's trying to break some type of record.
Yeah.
Like, he's already got problems landing. And even with that, that's a kind of a good segue. But even with someone like that, I'm thinking, what's his biggest problem? His feet. It's gonna always be his feet. He's got to land. If it's a boxer, he's got to punch. So the force, his wrist, his elbow, his traps, his neck. So I'm thinking, what every individual is using the most impact wise, and how I can be efficient in therapy with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, I think, because people immediately go to the other side of it. So, I think that's cool. When you were doing our session yesterday, you said something about you think there was a slight tear in my left quad. I didn't know that. I had no clue. I had no clue. And the only time I've ever had pain was in my hamstring, which makes sense from what you said earlier.
Yeah.
If you think about that, right? For me, I'm like, oh, okay, well, now light bulbs are going off because I'm sitting here listening to all this. I'm like, now I'm trying to deconstruct what's going on with me at the same time.
So it was your left hamstring?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that makes sense
And
to
I
me.
remember I said earlier that when the quad is tight, it causes
Right.
the hamstring to have problems.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
because basically, my wife and I were working out one day, and we didn't have access to the gym. We're leaving for a trip, going to a wedding, and went to that town, and we actually just went to their track. We're at NSU. Actually went to the college track, and we were going to do some sprints and stuff. We got in a foot race, and I joke with her all the time. We always I'm like, I had you, and then I screwed my leg up, because then we had to go back afterwards and literally scrape my hamstring because I couldn't walk, and I was like, we got to go to a wedding in 2 hours. I got to get back moving a little bit here.
Wow.
But yeah, dude. Anyways, I've had a lot of injuries, but it's that's one thing too. With I detached that pec tendon, and probably I was 23, maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I know I've probably put more stress. I know for a fact I put more stress on my right side of my body because of that. But even still, sometimes in weird tension, when I get in weird positions or whatever, I have tense, I can feel it almost lock up, and it scares the hell out of me. I'm like, oh crap, I don't want that to happen again.
Absolutely.
And I think it's become weak because of that, and so I can't really overcompensate too much without creating an issue, But at the same time, I've had a trap thing that happens when I deadlift, where I feel it way back in the back of my trap, but then after I work it gets all the way up through to my neck.
Yeah.
It's weird. So those are kind of the things I've been having going on, but it's I try to combat those things with I know if this is going to create an issue, or if I'm feeling, that's another thing I like to tell anyone is if I'm feeling even sort of not 100, I'm not about to go heavy, man.
Yeah,
because it's not an ego thing anymore for me, because now I'm just trying to be efficient, right?
Yeah.
If we're competing, I want to be able. Yes, I always want to be the strongest, but if I go in here and injure myself to try to get a PR, and then it puts me out from being able to compete 2 or 3 months just to say I got a PR, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So there's some days where I'll go in and I know I could probably get a 520 on deadlift, but I only did 480, and I'm like, okay, that's enough today. You know what I mean? It's just, that's kind of where I'm at now, my mindset. And I wish more people would think that way, but unfortunately when you're younger, especially, and you're in the game and you're trying to be the best or the strongest or the fastest, you're not, man. But like you said, athletes have such a high pain tolerance and threshold that they push it to the max all the time. There's never enough rest time. There's never enough stretching. I feel like, honestly, if I had time, I would spend an hour every day stretching, and that still wouldn't be enough. I mean, when you're constantly putting pressure on those muscles all the time, I just feel like there's a need for that, because how are they going to grow if they're just constantly, just constricted all the time?
Eventually, it will tear. It's just the way it is. I mean, we are designed to recover, but we're doing things in this generation that 120 years ago we would have never done.
Right.
I mean, we would have been, both of us, maybe farming,
right.
But we're not squatting, benching. It may have been a strong man doing that, but not us, So it's changed, and the system, unfortunately, we may say it's broken for us, the recovery side, but it really works to the benefit of those in charge.
Yeah.
So it does work. It just doesn't work for our benefit, you know? So it's what it is.
Well, what would your advice be to anybody? Are you keen on stretching enough, and or just at least body awareness? What do you?
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, we had talked about, I'm working on my intellectual property. I should be releasing it. I'm gonna go ahead and try to do it next month instead of keep pushing it back.
Okay.
And it involves body awareness. I would say that it always depends on the individual. So if you stretch too much, we can have a problem. You stretch too little, we can have a problem. So if I have a sprinter, he stretches too much. Now he has more range. So now he's not as tight. So his turnover is different, So now he's actually not as fast.
Okay.
So, and if I have a swimmer, they're trying to reach out, pull a little bit further out, maybe that'll benefit them, but not a sprinter necessarily. And I always suggest to individuals, don't implement something new at an event. If you see someone stretching a whole lot and you're not used to that stretch, do not do that stretch. The same thing with a meal. Don't change your meals. you know, the day of.
Yeah.
Like, if you had a hard training session and you ate peanut butter and jelly that day and you're about to compete, eat peanut butter and jelly that day as well. Don't change anything. And for me, like, I've tested my body. So I've tested it against stress. I don't know if we had this conversation. I ran 366 days straight.
No, we didn't.
Just to prove a point to myself that with every recovery, with every situation, I can push through, you know, and I can make it work. And I can't tell a client, an elite client, you can push through or you can get some therapy and this is going to work if I didn't trust it myself. And I did it. You know, it was horrible, but it was the best thing I ever did.
So 366 days in a row. How many miles were you running?
It had to be a mile.
Okay.
But in the middle of it, I ran a half marathon. But I got to a place the mile was nothing. You know, it was easy. So it probably on average I was hitting like 3 to 4 miles a day. Yeah. And it's so weird, but it felt like the most beautiful thing I ever did in my life, the most amazing accomplishment. But there are no accolades for that, you know. I mean, who really understands that?
Yeah.
You know, it's like once you've achieved something great, no one's gonna really understand it unless they've endured it as well. You know, and I feel the same way with everything I've done, and as a therapist, is the greater the accolades, you know, like it doesn't really come until someone's seen it and felt it. For me, just seeing someone perform at a very high level, that's the accomplishment. That shows me it was worth the endurance, you know, of getting there and pushing through mentally. But you really can't separate the mind and the body. As much as I've tried to do it with clients, I'm like, oh, this client, she can deal with it, he can deal with this. They have to be mentally dialed in to get to that next level. So even with me, like you may be able to endure a session physically, but if you mentally are not dialed in, you're not going to make it through a session with me. You know, it doesn't matter what level that person's at. And I find myself in this stage of my life willing to back down on the amount of pressure and all that, because it is really for that person. Because if this person is not trying to go to the NBA or set a world record, I don't need to max them out. But I would have to max somebody out that is trying to go to the next level. Mm-hmm. If you're talking about being an Olympian and you don't know what, you know, going to failure feels like, well, you need to go to failure. I'm gonna take you to failure.
You need to know your limits. Yeah. You need to know how far you can push it, because if you're literally a second down and you can push it to get to that second, like you need to know what your limitations are.
Yeah. And those are the type of athletes I work with. I actually had a guy, he was the fastest guy over 35 last year, you know. So things like that, you know, athletes like that. I had a guy who he was running a 4.840, mm-hmm. and it's on Instagram. He talks about it. Now he dropped it down to a 4.440.
Yeah,
I mean, we're talking speed. That's incredible.
Crazy. Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot. So tweaks like that and getting to that level. The question I get people thinking all the time, like, this is the smoke and mirrors, man. But I've seen it happen, like at Wide Guides. I've seen people come in injured.
Oh, I know.
And leaving with money.
Yeah.
I help them win money, and I was like, okay, this is.
Yeah, I know. Like my wife was having extreme issues with her shoulders, but we needed to finish that competition. She's just like, look, just gonna. I mean, you worked on that. I was just like, it's good. She's like, it's gonna hurt. I know it's screwed up, but we don't care. We're getting this thing done, and then we'll deal with the rehab afterwards. You know what I mean? And for me, I was just complete. I think everything was just tensed up between stress and. You have 6 workouts and within 24 hours, and they're mm-hmm. all insane. You know, and it's just mm-hmm. like, it's a lot. You know, and. I'm sure I'll be right back on the table this year because honestly, it's just one of those things where like you're pushing your body, you're taking your body when you're in competition. There's no way to practice for that. I don't care what you do. Like you can push yourself as hard as you want. If you're fighting, you can spar as hard as you want. Mm-hmm. Nothing compares to it. Nothing compares to what your body, what mentally what mentally happens to you, and how you tense up and everything. Like I remember we went in and competed. It's probably a couple months after that competition, and locally, but for some reason I was so worried about. My wife and I were doing team competition, and I'm horrible compared to her. It's just as far as like she's going to beat me anytime there's a workout, and you scale it to her weight, and her dimensions versus mine. She's always going to beat me because she's just faster and stronger for that position. And I knew that we were going to not do well because I knew I was going to be the ball and chain dragging us, and I was. But what I realized is midway through that competition, my body started to relax and loosen up, and I started performing better. So I've realized right then, I was like, okay, well, I put myself in a stressful position, and I literally restricted my movement and was cramping and stuff because I was so tense mentally. I did that to my body. And then once I got to the point to where I started being tired and I couldn't like mentally stress like and make my body do that anymore, I started becoming more relaxed, and I realized that, okay, you're in this already, let's just do it. And that's when it clicked for me. Okay, I got this now. Like I know that no matter what, I got to get on my hat on right mentally before I perform, because there's no comparison. There's just not. Like you can't manipulate or like recreate that in a practice session. You just can't. Like, but you do need to know your limits. Like,
True.
Because like for me now, as we work out and do these crazy workouts, I try to at least do a really good workout 4 times a week, and that's pretty much it. I don't do the everyday thing anymore.
Yeah.
I do like 2-a-days on Monday, but I'm doing a strength that morning and then more like a Spartan style light load that evening. So I feel like I'm encompassing everything all in one day. And then Tuesday and Wednesday I'll do one workout, and Thursday, if I can, I'll do one workout depending on how my body feels. So I feel like that's been the most efficient for me.
Gotcha.
But at the same time, feel like I have to be in deep water now, like mentally. So like I have to feel like I'm almost gonna die to feel like I got to work out, which sometimes is scary too if you think about it. You know, like if I'm working out and I feel like I don't want to quit, then I know I'm not working out hard enough.
Gotcha.
It's just
that
crazy.
Shows you're
dude.
in a different place.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I like, a year ago I'd been like, dude, I'm
done.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. But at the same time, I try not to push myself it's not so much a load bearing thing where I'm like trying to max out. It's more like, okay, can you keep going? Can you keep going?
Yeah.
You hadn't stopped sweating yet, so you're not about to, you're not about to fall out. You're not dehydrated. Those kind of things. And that's the kind of conversation I'm always having with myself mentally now. Is like, if you don't want to quit, you don't need to be doing it. You know what I mean? If you're on the competition level, you know what I mean?
It's a different place. This what you just said is the very reason, like I said earlier, why guys and events like that's my Super Bowl. Yeah. Because I get to see muscles at their worst, you know what I'm saying, or at their best, and by me seeing like the tweak, I can do a tweak here, I can do a tweak there, and then we get them to perform at a high level there or here, that's everything for me to know that those techniques are going to work and be very proficient in that at that state, but there's something that I don't hear a lot of people talk about that you just kind of sparked in my head to bring up: fight or flight. Yeah. Where there are only a couple of things that you can do to challenge yourself that way. That could be cryo, where cryotherapy works, but it doesn't work on a high level that people boost it up to do. And the first time I did it, I remember the sensation of, I just don't want to be here. Yeah. I hate it. I don't want to be here. Did I feel better after? Yes, but I know what it does. It just brings blood to the inside. And all your pain is gone because the blood is not there, So, and then when you warm up, the blood comes back. So generally, you're still going to have some issues, So it doesn't reduce inflammation on a high scale, but it is working fight or flight. So because of that mechanism happening, you become tougher, So on my side of therapy, a lot of times I'm working fight or flight, and clients don't even know it, because if you can tolerate a little pressure, and you're like, oh, that's not bad. And then I increase it. Oh, that is bad. And then a little bit later, you're like, well, I don't feel it as much now. Well, because I just raised your tolerance. So now you're tolerating more because I've just told your nervous system that you can endure more. Yeah. But now when I hit a place that is the origin of your issue, it'll be unbearable. You're like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't like that at all, because I didn't know that was going on. But that's like me jumping a circuit. So that's generally what I'm doing with clients. I'm just going through and testing areas that they have no idea is hurting, and that's really working fight or flight. How
do you feel about so I'm doing right now I'm doing an ice bath and then immediately going into the hot tub. How do you feel about that? I think that's first, ideal situation. Get up in the morning, pee, drink a little bit of water, go straight to the ice bath. And right now, with these temperatures as high as they are and it being on the back patio, I can only get it down to in the high 50s right now without having to go out there and dump 20 bags of ice in it. So I'd say I'll get in there for like 5 minutes, and then I'll go straight to like 104 degrees into the hot tub. Like, what do you think about that?
I think for the level you're at, you need to continue to do it.
Okay.
I'm not saying that it's bad or good, but think about the stress that you're putting your body through. So if I take a guy from Florida and he's used to that climate, and I take him to Canada in the winter, how's he going to perform?
Yeah.
And if I take a guy from Canada, in the wintertime and take him to Florida, how's he going to perform? They're going to perform differently.
Yeah.
So I would say you need both. You physically need those extremes to be balanced, in your movement, or even in how you can deal with stress, because you're going to get hot when you're working out.
Yeah.
And you're going to get cold, and you may feel shock. And I worked an Ironman, and I remember after the Ironman, this one guy, man, he just he was in shock. To see someone working extremely hard all day and what their muscles do when they start to cool down is the most bizarre thing. So that also helped me with the extremes, So I do believe in really exposing yourself to those extremes, but being balanced with that and not being over the top with it.
Do you think it's good from like what everyone says? Like, do you think it's still decent for like doing that? Any type of method similar to that, like, you think it's decent for any muscle recovery at all, or do you think it's more?
I do think so. I think it definitely, once again, it works your fight or flight mechanism.
Yeah, because you definitely don't want to get in the water. And look, I know some people are doing 30-degree cold plunge. Yeah. Good for y'all, bro. But it's not 100 degrees outside when you're getting into 30 degrees. Yeah. It's like 70 when you're getting into 30.
So it's
I'm jumping from 100 to 50 because I can't get it no lower than that. And it's cold as hell.
I mean, I personally can't sit there and I can't look at a guy and say you're tougher.
Right.
And you're in Florida versus this dude that just jumped in, what I'm saying,
right.
this cold plunge.
Right.
I'm thinking that guy's tougher, and in reality he is. So the SEAL teams, when they were training guys, they would dump them in cold water, right? But they now, in my opinion, they were not focusing on recovery.
No.
They were trying to see how would you perform under stress. So the same with you. That's showing you how you would perform under stress. Even an even better way to use it would be cold plunge, work out, a little bit, go run. Cold plunge, go run, and work it like that, because it's showing you, hey, I can function, under that stress. But that's fight or flight, So either way, you're working the mechanism of fight or flight. So you're going from the cold, extreme cold, to extreme warmth, and it's showing you your body that you can endure.
Yeah.
So
I've just been trying it out because of course everyone's been talking about it forever, and right now it's just like that's as cold as I can get it. And that's the best scenario we have right now as far as being able to use it. But I've never done it, and I've never done what I used to do is I'd do like a really, really cold shower, which is not that cold, if you think about it, but a cold, just ice cold shower, and then straight into like an Epsom salt bath. Like, so that's how I used to do it back in the day, especially when I was like cutting weight and muscle fatigue and all that.
If you're cutting weight and you're doing it, you're gonna sweat a lot more.
Yeah.
I personally think I'd rather a client, if they were gonna do it, just do the cold and not do the heat.
Right.
But I mean, it has its benefits to it. Now, as far as my therapy, once I'm done with a client and they do heat, they'll actually get too loose, and then they'll wake up stiff, because now I already created a lot of inflammation, So now you have the inflammation, and you put some heat on inflammation, which creates more inflammation.
Yeah, I think that's why I was so tight last night after working out, because my body finally cooled off after you doing all those movements and adjustments, and then me going, waited 2 or 3 hours, probably 4 or 5 hours, then worked out and got to an extreme temperature. I was sweating horribly yesterday. And then I didn't even think about that too. I was probably sweating more too because of the lactic acid release. But I was sweating like bad, like coming out my fingertips, bro, yesterday.
And that happened to me. My therapist, I have this heated scraper that just is new to the market, and she she used it on my feet, and I was telling my wife, my feet have never sweat this
My
much.
feet were sweating so bad yesterday, bro. I just thought about that. I was telling my wife, I was like, I'm sweating. I said, I must be sweating out all our sins from the weekend. but it wasn't. It was from you.
Yep, because I was using that heated scraper on you.
Bro.
I was after them feet, man.
Bro, my socks were soaking wet. I was like, bro,
That's
my feet never sweat like that.
Yeah, man. The same for me.
But I mean, I believe in what you're doing, man. To be honest, like I just think I'm excited about it. I'm glad you took the time to come on here, and I believe in what you're doing. And I think that no matter, for me, I've lived multiple lives as far as like the quote unquote athlete. I'm not never really performed team sports athlete. It's kind of been more solo, like fighting and lifting, competition, CrossFit. Like I just wish I would have found these things and cared enough 10 years ago, but doesn't everyone, right? Like at some point I just think that people need to become more body aware, and they need to realize that they can't do everything themselves. And just because you're pushing through pain doesn't make you better, faster, and stronger. Like that you need help. Like you need to figure out things, and you need to learn what it is you need to do and what you don't need to do. And a lot of times you only have one shot, and if you screw it up, you push past that point to where you tear something. Like I'm never going to bench over 400 pounds again. I just know it because I blew it out. It just is what it is. And now I have to just say, okay, well, let that ego go and never know, always know that I'm never going to do that, but I can be stronger in other positions,
Absolutely.
And I just think that people need to know about it, man. I think they need to know what you're doing, what it looks like versus the regular massage therapy, what it looks like versus PT, and what it looks like versus chiropractic.
So what would you say the difference in your experience was, like far as why was it so different to you?
And what you do, so I would say this, I think that it's extremely apparent that you can pinpoint issues. Whereas any other time, especially like a massage, like they'll just be like, oh, you're tight right here, and they just work on that. Where you're like, okay, there's an issue here, but it's coming from here. And you remind me more of like a sports chiropractor, like from what I've experienced, like because you're connecting the dots. Whereas any other time I've been anywhere, they're just like, oh, okay, well, this is tight, so we need to work on it. And I don't think that, just what you mentioned earlier, I just think that's counterproductive. Like, because anytime I've had a deep tissue, I've literally come out of there feeling like I was just like a zombie. And I think that's probably a bad thing, because then I never really realized what was wrong with me. You just relaxed everything on me. And now we can't pinpoint an issue. What's tight? I don't know what's tight now, bro. I don't even know. Like, I don't even know. Like, everything is loose. I feel like water. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that's the most beneficial thing in what you're doing. I think that you just are able to isolate an issue and work on it, whereas most people think they're going somewhere to relax. That's fine if you're going to therapeutic massage, but if you're going to fix an issue or find an issue, like I'm having pain here and I've tried everything. Well, no, you haven't, because typically, like you said, if you have pain, it's coming from somewhere else, and most people just, your body doesn't tell you that. Your body says it hurts right here. Rub on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then as you rub on it, it relaxes and it ends up going to here, and you're like, oh shit, well that came from my neck, not my back of my trap. That's what I've experienced. You know? So yeah, man, that's my stance on it. I think I'm all for it.
Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, heck yeah, dude. Well, any last plugs? Anything you want to mention? If they follow you on Instagram, what's your Instagram?
Yeah, I'm LMT Don Jackson on Instagram. I changed my name on TikTok. It used to be Machete Jackson, so I think it's just Don Jackson on TikTok. And I think it's Advanced Sports Massage Therapy on YouTube, but advancedsportsmassagetherapy.com on the internet. So if you try to go to my website, you can hit me there. And I think I like to leave everyone with, it's not over. If you are an athlete or just a regular person, I work on all types of people, and I want to see everyone move their very best. And I want people to have hope, because that's what it's really about. I don't believe our body, if you look at it as a machine, is created to be in pain. Pain is a signal to say, help me. And when that help me stops, there's actually a greater problem sometimes. It's like, help me, and then you start overcompensating, and you feel like I'm better, but now you're turning your foot all out weird. You're moving so you won't have pain. versus dealing with the issue. And I would tell any person, no matter what the situation is, deal with the issue. Have the conversation with your family member. Have the conversation with yourself. Deal with issues. And that's what life is about. It's really, we got to deal with stuff.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to get around things, face it.
Sounds good, bro. Let's end on that. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you,
yes,
brother.
Sir.